Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I'm very, very excited to welcome our next podcast interview guest to the podcast today. Hi, Erik. How is it going today?
Going well. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. I was just saying it's already noon in the Pacific time, and I feel like the day has a little bit flown by today, which is fine. Sometimes we need a little bit more easy days, right?
No question. Every day can't be a hard day.
Exactly. And I've had 2 really hard days the last 2 days. So it's nice to have like a chill day. Not hard in the sense of just a lot of work, not hard in another sense. Erik, I always start the question with pick us up where you are. Where do you live? What time is it? And what have you been up to this morning?
Yeah, so I am in Houston, Texas. I just moved back here in November. It's 2:01 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay.
And so I've had a little bit more to my day. I've been working on a presentation about stress,
Interesting.
marketing plan for my company, AIM7, and got a good workout. And now I'm here with you.
Right. That's awesome. Very cool. Tell us more about that stress presentation that you prepared.
Yeah, so it's for a partnership I'm doing with a company for employees about burnout
Okay.
and how they can like recalibrating their mindset as to what stress is, like biologically what stress really is, and then like how they can actually giving them some tools to regulate stress in the moment, and then how they actually can lean into stress to change their brain.
How can they lean in to stress to change their brain? That's very interesting.
Yeah, so it's called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is your brain's modification in response to its environment. And so the pathway to change anything. So let's say you want to learn a new language. You're from Germany, right?
Mhm.
I want to learn German. And I sit down and I'm going to work out, like, I don't know, I'm going to read a text, a very difficult passage, and I'm going to be learning like how to conjugate verbs. And there's going to be frustration that occurs. Okay. And that frustration is because of an increase in basically adrenaline. And what happens is when you bring your focus to that text, there's a sense of agitation. There's a little bit of bump in adrenaline, which makes you feel stressed out. But then there's this neuromodulator called acetylcholine that's actually released in the brain. And it marks the actual neurons in your brain that are being used to learn that text. And then when you sleep later at night, those neurological connections are strengthened. So it is only through stress that you can change your brain and modify your behavior. But then the second part is in rest. So it's this dichotomous relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super cool. Thanks so much for explaining this. But before we go into all of these things, let's take a step back and hear a little bit more about you and what you've been up to over the last couple of years. Like, what's been your career like? You come from a little bit of a different background, and I'm super, super excited to talk with you about everything.
Yeah, so I guess you could say right now I'm an entrepreneur and a high performance expert. Prior to August of 2020, I'd spent about 16 years in collegiate and professional sport. I worked in the NFL, National Football League. I trained Olympic gold medalists in sprint events, and I worked in NCAA college football. I made my mark, I guess you could say, as a sports scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what's called a high performance director. So if you look online, somebody says they're a high performance coach. In the world of sport, that means something dramatically different. So to be a high performance director in sport, it means that you oversee the total development of the athlete, the physical, the psychological, the technical, and the tactical. So you would oversee strength and conditioning coaches, sports psychologists, nutrition, sports medicine, all of these things. And then you work to bring them together in a plan that can help bring an athlete to another level, to hopefully they can obtain their performance potential. And so I got on that track back in 2011. I introduced something called athlete tracking technology to American sport. So imagine the first Fitbit that was ever put on an athlete, a little bit more sophisticated, attached to GPS satellites and all this kind of stuff. But we quantified the game of football for the first time, and it really led to a revolution in American sport. And that really kind of launched my career. And I became an expert in like sports wearables and stress and resilience. And so I did my doctoral work while I was at the University of Kentucky as the high performance director in how sleep impacts the brain's ability to adapt to stress. Because what I wanted to do is help my athletes become more adaptable. So the athlete that can train the hardest, train the most frequently, and adapt the fastest is going to have the best opportunity to realize their potential. And so I wanted to help them lean into stress and adapt to it. And so, I was able to do that. I was able to coach some amazing athletes, worked with an 8-time Olympic medalist, Veronica Campbell Brown. She's one of 2 women to ever win the 200 meters twice in the Olympics, the gold medal. And then 2 years ago, I realized that there was this gap in the consumer market that I'd seen in the sports world where you had like a ton of data from like your Fitbit or your Apple Watch. Like I walked 10,000 steps or slept 7 hours, but really who cares? It doesn't mean anything to the individual. And so I had solved that problem in sports. I was like, people deserve custom solutions using their data. So I launched a company called AIM7 this past summer. And we're actually doing that. We're taking your data and we're pairing it with world-class high performance expertise and using machine learning to help people improve their energy, reduce stress, help them sleep better and actually lose weight. So I've gone on through a drastic career shift, but it was really the same thing. I've taken my eye off of athletes and now brought it to the general population.
Yeah. And for that, I would say it's not actually that much of a drastic career shift, because everything that you've done leading up until then basically prepared you for what you're doing today.
Exactly.
Which I think
100%.
Yeah. I have a million questions. I don't even know where to start. Okay, maybe I just start with, because you just finished talking about AIM7 and basically using the data to create habits. That's kind of your tagline. How do you do that? How would that exactly look? Let's say I have an Apple Watch. I don't actually have an Apple Watch, but let's say I have one and I get all of this information. How would I connect with you and how would I get kind of a customized program?
Yeah, so our product actually launches in July, but first week of July. But what we're doing is like artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's like this real big buzzword, right? It's only as good as who trains the machine learning models. So what we're using is something called decision intelligence.
Okay.
And decision intelligence is the merger of human expertise with machine learning to make better decisions that lead to better outcomes. Okay. So what we're doing is we have some of the best experts in the world, Dr. Peter Haverl, a performance psychologist for the USOC. We got some amazing folks. Awesome. And let's just take energy, for instance. Like we know from our expertise, there's all these things, these big knobs that you can turn that will help improve somebody's energy. And we can look at your biological markers from your Apple Watch, let's say your heart rate variability, which is a measure of stress. And we can look at all the activities that you love to do. And what we can do is we can assess in the moment how you're feeling and then create the customized action plan for you to help you keep feeling better and having more energy based off of what you love to do. Because the best plan for somebody is somewhere between like what they love to do and what's best for them. Yes. And so we bake in a behavior design model and it's going to be really fantastic. So it
sounds great. I'm very excited. I think this is a super, super cool idea. And it's so true that we have so much data at our hands nowadays, but we still don't really translate it into actionable new behaviors and habits. And that's something that I actually, always try to tell my clients and the participants of my workshop as well. It's like without action and without actually changing anything, nothing is going to change.
Yeah. A phrase that I learned was data without insight is useless.
Yeah.
So in your world, like you may know the problem, but if you don't take action, like, so what if you know the problem, right?
Good for you, knowing
So,
the problem. Yeah. What I'm super fascinated about sports and
mhm.
professional athletes. So I love that you actually have that combination of both. And I want to talk a little bit about that. One of the things that you were saying was that, you were training athletes and, they
Mhm.
push their performance, but then it was really when they were sleeping that they actually made these connections and they integrated all of the things, obviously they rested their muscles as well, and all the important stuff. A lot of people that I work with have a lot of trouble sleeping because they have too much stress in their lives. And they don't maybe even see yet the importance of sleep, right? There's still those people out there as well. What would you tell, like, how would you convince a person to sleep more, or even get into a better sleeping routine in order to help them integrate their new learned learnings, but also help them improve their performance with sleep?
Wow, that's a big question. So let's just start with the first one of like why sleep is important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Three fundamental things happen when you sleep. Number one, your tissues restore themselves, they're regenerated. Hormones like growth hormone are released, which actually like help regenerate tissue. So the way that your body heals itself is why, like a big period of time is when you're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
There's also periods of time when you sleep, you don't even realize, but you're basically paralyzed. Your body shuts down all movement and activity so that it kind of gives your cells a break, your muscular cells. Then there's other things that are going on in the brain. Number two, there's something called the glymphatic system of the brain. And what it does is it actually helps get rid of metabolic waste products that accumulate in your brain during the day. So there's literally these proteins are flushed out, some of which are associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's when this happens. You've heard of the lymphatic system of the body. There's the glymphatic system of the brain, and this is something that's been found in the past decade. And then the third thing is when memory and learning consolidation actually occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that hard work that you put in during the day is realized and finalized when you sleep. And so those, like I mentioned earlier, there are neurological connections that are actually strengthened based off of what you learn during the day while you sleep. And there's other ones that are weakened because your brain actually expands and contracts when you sleep. And so the things that you're concentrating and focusing on are strengthened. The different parts of sleep, you probably heard of REM sleep and non-REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Different types of learnings are cemented during different times. So like non-REM sleep, it's more like motor tasks, fine. What's the word I'm looking for here? Like the details of what you're learning. REM sleep, like emotional situations are filtered. Pardon me. And it's when like context to daily activities occur. So if you don't get enough REM sleep, which is mostly happening towards the end of the night, you may be emotionally unstable.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may be grumpy a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
your friends are like, "Hey, so and so needs to get a nap," you know. So
Yeah.
it's really, it has a dramatic impact on your emotions. The second thing I would say is like, so that there's the importance of sleep, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
tissue restoration, cleaning out your brain, and then learning and putting all your hard work to, cementing that. Then I would say if somebody's not in a good sleep practice, there's a couple things that you can do, like real big things you can do to start regulating your body. So we're inside a lot now. And I think with COVID, we're inside even more. The way that our wakefulness and sleep cycle, the circadian rhythm, it's a 24-hour rhythm, is what's called entrained or synchronized, is by our exposure to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so if within several hours of waking, like within 2 hours of waking, you do not go outside and see the sun, like if you were to eat food and put food into your mouth and chew it and digest it, it'd be broken down into chemicals and then eventually send out to the rest of your body in the form of glucose so you can have energy, right? The way that your body synchronizes its activity is through light through the eyes. The eyes are actually an extension of the brain outside the head. And so when light enters the eyes early in the morning, it sends a signal to this thing that sits on top of the roof of your mouth called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it's like the circadian timekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And sun is the big time giver. It's like, oh, it's time to wake up. And you get this big pulse in what's called cortisol, which is good. And it makes you more alert. So if you want to be more alert during the day and have more focus, get outside for just a couple minutes, even if it's cloudy. And that's going to help with that. The second thing that happens is there's this kind of internal timer that goes off that says in 12 to 16 hours, start increasing melatonin. Mm-hmm. Okay. So just getting exposure to the sun early in the morning, especially when the sun's lower on the horizon. And then about 1 hour circa sunset, when the sunset's going down, that anchors the circadian clock to say it's time to go to bed. So I've helped a lot of people that just like, they're in a sleep funk. They're like, I think it's important. I just don't feel tired. Within a matter of a couple days, 2 to 10 minutes in the morning, 2 to 10 minutes in the evening, you will start to feel alert during the day and sleepy later in the evening when it's time to go to bed. Mm. So if you've been out of whack, so to speak, that's a great way to kind of get back on track.
Yeah, that's a super cool tip. And, I that's almost more a personal question, but I'm very curious about that. Sometimes I love sports and I love to train. And sometimes when I have a really intense training or I haven't trained in a while and then I get back into training, I sometimes have trouble sleeping because I feel like my muscles are so on and they're like doing so much work after a big workout that I have trouble sleeping. Is there an explanation to that?
When do you train?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say maybe in the early afternoon.
That could be it.
Okay.
Some people are a little more sensitive to training later in the day than others, especially if it's in like 5 or 6 o'clock. That can really keep you up, because when you work out, there's a sympathetic neurological response. So there's this thing called the autonomic nervous system in your body. It has 2 branches, one that like prepares the body to go, and the one that allows you to rest and digest. And when you exercise, you get into that sympathetic response. That could be one thing. I don't know. That's an interesting question, to be honest. Like there's a lot of, I don't know, whenever you add something new into your regimen, it can throw off your circadian rhythm a little bit. Does it usually settle in after you train for a week or two?
Yeah, it does for sure. Yeah, it's just like the first 1 or 2 times when I haven't worked out in a while, or I do something super intense that I haven't done before. Then I just feel like my body temperature is warmer. Like I feel like I'm really hot the whole night, And
you got a big adrenaline dump. These things called catecholamines are released. Your body temperature is elevated, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, and maybe you're just a little more sensitive to that. Do you run or do you lift weights, or what do you do?
Yeah, all the things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, running, lifting weights. And then obviously I live in Lake Tahoe, so lots of outdoor activities, mountain biking, snowboarding, backcountry skiing. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, interesting question. There was a side note. I was watching a few of your videos as a preparation of our podcast interview. There were some interesting YouTube videos about you. Geez. I think I guess talking about that wearable, because I saw it in the back of one of the athletes.
Oh, the University of Kentucky one.
Yeah. And
that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was in 2013. Imagine 8 years ago. You were talking in that video about how to create intense focus. And again, I work with a lot of peak performers in the corporate world, and that want to keep, like, they would love to obviously keep their focus intense all day long, but I try to tell them that they need also rest phases in order to keep that intense focus up. But when someone is struggling with focus, what would you recommend them to do?
Another fantastic question. So I'll answer that in 2 ways. We have this 24-hour circadian rhythm, right? And then we have what's called ultradian rhythms, which are 90-minute cycles. So you sleep in 90-minute cycles of REM and non-REM sleep, but you also have 90-minute cycles during the day of alertness. And when your alertness like it goes up and then it comes down, and it goes up and it comes down. So I actually arrange my day in what I call productivity sprints, taking advantage of this scientific principle. So I will work intensely for 90 minutes and then take a 20-minute break, because there's a dip and there's a circadian trough. Okay. And so during those 20 minutes though, I don't sit there and stare at my phone. I just like completely disconnect.
Okay.
Because when you want to bring focus to something, like focus is like a diffuse light. You want to bring it like a spotlight on a stage, and you can only hold it there for so long because there's a biochemical process that takes place, and then it's going to fade. So working in periods of 90 minutes, 20 minutes, 90 minutes, 20 minutes, and being okay with, I'm not going to go for 8 straight hours. You're just not going to be as productive. Another thing too is, there's a lot to be made about mindfulness practice, but what mindfulness really trains you is it trains awareness. Stress and all that kind of stuff is like a separate piece, but really what mindfulness does is it trains you to place your attention where you want it, when you want it there. And so, a mindfulness practice will allow you to realize when your focus is drifting off, and then you can redirect it back to what you want to do. And then there's other things like we talked about just a second ago, like the circadian entrainment. If you're not getting sun exposure and you're not creating the right behaviors, you're not getting the right biological responses to set the stage. Like you got to set the conditions for focus. And so if you're not entraining your circadian clock, if you're not getting restful and fulfilling sleep, if you're not doing basic fundamental things like getting 150 minutes of exercise a week, if you're, not hydrating properly, like you're just not even putting yourself in a position, like if you talk about an athlete, to come out of the starting gate, right? Or if a coach or a corporate executive, like you need to set the conditions for success. And there's fundamentals that you need to have in place. And without those things, you're like, I'm fine. Well, you really don't even know it's capable.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Well, and also how long are you going to be fine? Right. Because I feel like we can push our bodies for maybe a few years. But then at some point, that's kind of the experience I've had personally, but then also now I see that with the clients that I work with, is we push ourselves, right? And then at some point we burn out because we can't always just push ourselves. We also need the other side of the coin, basically.
That is what adaptation is all about. It's an adaptation game. Stress at the appropriate dose, followed by rest, and you can adapt to more. And so like, here's an illustration I like to use. If I had a bowl in my hands, okay, like this, and that bowl was filled to the brim with water, and that water represents all the stress that you can handle. And then I were to kind of toss and turn the bowl a little bit, the water spills over. That's like you not being able to handle life. Life gets totally out of whack. You kind of start getting burnt out. Now, imagine I have a huge bowl that both hands can hold. I mean, it's huge. And I pour the same amount of water in. You can move that thing all around and nothing's going to spill out. The idea is not to mitigate stress or reduce stress. It's to become more adaptable so that when things come at you, it doesn't cost you as much. It's all a biological process. And so you can apply this to anybody, whether you're, a stay-at-home parent and you got multiple kids, if you set the conditions and you lean into stress and then apply the right amount of rest, you're biologically, you can handle, your capacity to handle more increases. And so whether it's the body doesn't know if it's physical or psychological, is a general stress response. And so if that's the whole point of my company, actually AIM7, is we're helping people become more adaptable. And you can do this, like your clients, like that is the key to them having a great 8-hour workday, setting the conditions, being more adaptable, and then having some discipline around how they do their work.
Yeah. And so what do you do in those 20 minutes of rest? You said you completely disconnect.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll take a nap.
Okay.
Go on a walk, go into portrait mode. Like instead of being focused like this, like just like bring it out, like just take it out, like take in the horizon. Like you just want to kind of zoom out, I'll go talk to my wife or whatever,
Yeah.
play with my kids. I'm at the house, and then go back to work. Now, it's not perfect. Like sometimes I go 2 hours, sometimes it's 60 minutes, but the 90-minute thing, like I literally set my day up. Like I use blocks of time,
Okay.
and I try to, as close as I can. And then I actually use some things to kind of like know where I'm at in that ultradian cycle. But yeah,
That's
how I
awesome.
do it.
That's really cool. And why AIM 7? What's the
Great
story
question.
behind that name?
I wanted to, like, as a coach, like my whole career, like the whole point of coaching somebody is you're pointing them in the right direction. I loved the word AIM. AIM was AOL Instant Messenger, aim.com. There's no way I could get that. And so the guy that helped us do the branding, Mark Hemian, he's really sharp. He actually did a lot with Google. He was at Google for a while. He's like, we were talking about, the brand. Anyways, we came up with like the number 7 means a lot. It's a number of completion. It's 7 days a week. So we're going to aim you and we're going to surround you and be with you all the time, helping you move towards that destination that you desire. So, and the branding's awesome. Like you can, we like A7 team. Like once we started breaking down, like, oh, this is special. So, and I can get the domain too. That was another thing. That's why you see these weird company names now.
For sure.
That,
because it's like, is it actually still available or not?
Yeah. A 3-letter or 3-character or 4-character domain can cost you a fortune. And so luckily I got it and we ran with it.
Yeah, very cool. I attended a super, super inspiring panel discussion last night with the University of Illinois. And it was 50 students and the topic was mental health. And I thought it was incredible because like I look back, to my early 20s, I'm like, never heard about mental health at that time, didn't even know what that was. And, not like, it was just not in my sphere of attention or awareness. And I just thought it was super, super powerful to talk with students about my personal experience and then obviously hear from the other panelists about their experience. And one of the students, I don't know if you've already heard about it, but I thought I'd bring it up. And one of the students said there's a really cool HBR documentary about the weight of gold and how mental health is influencing and impacting athletes and obviously Olympians. And no matter if you've seen the documentary, I haven't seen it yet either. I have it here on a piece of paper as well, because I'm really curious to watch it. Yeah. I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about how you prepare athletes to be in that intense focus during their races and competition, and when they have to perform. How do you prepare them, and how have you maybe even seen, I know that's 2 questions, but how have you seen the mental health space evolve in sports over the last 20 years?
So the first part, it's about stress inoculation. Okay. So if you take an athlete or like a Navy SEAL, right? These amazing warriors, right? You take a Navy SEAL up into a plane that, let's just say they never went through jump school training. They take them up into a plane and they're at 7,000 feet. You put a parachute on them. They never jumped out of an airplane. You put them at the edge of the plane. You say, jump. Do you think they're going to be scared?
Yes, I think so.
Yes, absolutely. Because they've never done it before.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if I take that same Navy SEAL and we take them to Fort Benning, Georgia, where there's a jump school where you actually learn how to jump out of a plane, and they start by teaching you how to jump off like a 10-foot and like a foam pit. And then they teach you how to like fall, land, and roll. And then they have these towers where they'll put a parachute up in this thing and they pull you up, and then they'll drop you from the parachute, and it gets higher, higher, and higher, and higher, and higher. And over 3 weeks, eventually you're ready to jump. Okay. If you take any individual and put them in a situation that they're not prepared for, the stress can debilitate them. So the first thing is you have to train whatever it is they have to do and slowly scale it to the most intense scenario. So you start off by teaching them, there's just stages of learning. Have you heard of this before? Unconscious incompetence.
Yes.
You have conscious incompetence, then conscious competence, then unconscious competence.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start with the skill, and then you teach them at a very low speed, low stress environment. And over time, you add stress and speed until it gets to become like the exact scenario. Mm-hmm. That's one part of it. Another part is adding change and variability to things when they're least expecting it. Mm-hmm. Because rarely does race day or game day go as you think. Rain delays. I was at a world championship once with Veronica, and it just started pouring right at the time she got in the starting blocks. So all sorts of crazy stuff. You try to create stressful situations, mm-hmm. and then you have to equip them psychologically in advance. And this is where working with, like, now that sports psychology or performance psychology is really taking root. A huge influence of my thought process on this is Dr. Peter Haberl. He's actually the senior sports psychologist at the USOC. He's part of our AIM-7 advisory group. And I heard him speak a number of years ago at the U.S. Olympic Training Center. And he told this story about a guy named Chris Hoy, Sir Chris Hoy. He's the most decorated Olympic cyclist of all time. I think he's got 6 Olympic golds. Wow. And he talked about what it felt like to race in Olympic finals. And he said when he would, now this is an indoor cyclist, he said, it felt like I was going to the gallows, like he was going to be executed. Mm-hmm. Now, this is an Olympic champion. So there's a myth out there that the world's best don't experience pressure. They do. Mm-hmm. What they do is he then said, like, so what I would do is I would grip the steering wheel. I could feel my feet in the clips. So what he was doing is he was aware that he felt these uncomfortable feelings. Mm-hmm. Then he shifted his focus and attention to executing something he could control. So, like, people get up and speak in front of a large audience. Most people are going to feel a little nervous, right? Mm-hmm. Some people are going to feel real nervous, but that's okay. You can now shift your attention and go, okay, I feel this way. I acknowledge that. Now I can use that and go, okay, now I'm going to focus on my opening line, or I'm going to focus on connecting with somebody in the audience. So there's a long-term preparatory process. And then I'll just be quite frank, at the world-class level, some people can do it in the moment and others can't. Mm-hmm. I'm talking at like the top 5 in the world. Like mm-hmm. the person that has run the most sub 10-second 100-meter sprints is not Usain Bolt. It's Osafa Powell. Mm-hmm. But when Osafa would race at world championships and Olympics, couldn't do it. He would be in the finals, but he would always choke. Technically, maybe the greatest sprinter ever.
Wow, that's super interesting.
It's wild, isn't it? And
yeah.
so, yeah.
But so it totally makes sense. Like I said, I'm very fascinated about that, and totally makes sense that it really differentiates the successful from the second and third and fourth people, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, obviously it's physical capability, but so much more mental. And I feel like obviously everything, I think, it gets decided in your brain and in your head. And so if you're starting to choke, then it's going to have an incredibly big impact on you. Yes. And obviously, because I love sports as well, I can even tell that on myself, right? I have good days and I have bad days. I go mountain biking and I think it's fun. And then I have days where I'm choking all the time because I just, get into a mental state that might not be as helpful for me in that moment. And I'm a really big fan of Jamie Anderson, snowboarder. She already has 2, I think she has 3 or 4 Olympic golds. But she's from Lake Tahoe.
Oh, wow.
And she's incredible. Like, she's now in her late 20s and she's just rocking it. And I think the big difference between her and she's like really into yoga and spirituality. And I think it helps her to stay focused and be present and be aware and not choke in the right moments.
Super interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, super interesting. The second question, mental health in athletes. How has that
You
been?
know, I think it's less of a stigma to say that I'm not doing okay. Now you see athletes all the time coming out and just saying like, I've struggled. Dak Prescott, quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, said it, you know, that I struggled with mental health at certain points. I think we're just even more aware of what it means not to be healthy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from a psychological perspective. Depression, there's less of a stigma around that. Like depression is a real thing. Like you can't just think positive and everything's going to be okay. No, it's like, doesn't work like that. Like sometimes you can legitimately become depressed and there's a chemical response. Like if you understand neuroscience, like there's things can get out of sync, you know, serotonin and dopamine and all this kind of stuff. And you may need some, seek professional help. And, you know, more often than not now that when people start going down that path of like, I'm not feeling this, I'm like, you need to consider talking to a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And yeah, and so there is you know, there's a fine line between performance anxiety and like, and then like when you start getting into depression or
Mm-hmm.
having mental health issues. And I think as a coach, you need to be aware of like when your expertise runs out
Mm-hmm.
and when you need to pass off the baton. um, I had a great colleague when I was at William and Mary, Dr. Deidre Connolly, and she was fantastic. Like, you know, just go see Deidre, you know, like,
Yeah.
and you have to create an environment in the workplace. If it's, you know, look, if you're if you're in the modern day workplace and you have the financial resources, I think you should definitely be offering mental health services, and you need to make it okay that you're not feeling okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, you know, and provide people with opportunities to seek help and then support them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I totally resonate with that. We actually had that conversation with the students last night as well, because we were talking about therapy and they asked me, you know, how it is in Germany. And I said, you know, in Germany, when I was growing up, therapy was like, you know, like the crazy people went to therapy kind of a thing, you know, there was a lot of stigma around it. And I've just very recently, when I had my burnout, I had a burnout in 2018. That was the first time I saw a therapist at the age of 32. And, you know, I think one of the biggest realizations I've had going through therapy was that it's just like, I don't know, I almost see it like a coach. Like, you know, I'm a coach, and sometimes I have conversations with my clients that are probably could be therapy conversations, right? Because I think there is a fine line, right? When are you handing off the baton from a coach to a therapist? But at the end of the day, how I explained it to the students yesterday is I said, you know, all athletes have a coach in order to perform at their best and to learn about themselves and to show them areas that they are not aware of because they live in their reality. And that's how I see working with a coach or with a therapist, because you just get a different perspective and someone that supports you along the way, instead of seeing it as, I feel like therapy still has this like clinical association and connotation to something that's like for some people that are not, that have a problem, you know. But I think it's more, I see it a lot more as an amazing opportunity to grow and become a better person.
No question. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Great. Erik, let me see. Have I asked you all the questions? Maybe one question, one last question. Do you have a daily routine that supports your mental health, or how do you wake up in the morning? Like, how does your day look?
So I do my best to try to get 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. We have 3 boys, so that sometimes doesn't work out, but I really prioritize that. I literally in the morning go out and look at the sun.
Nice.
I do it, and I will notice a difference if I don't. And so like I try to put, like I just said, create the conditions. I take a nap almost every afternoon for 15 to 20 minutes, and I don't feel bad about it.
Nice.
I try to organize my day in like those 90-minute productivity cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I exercise. Like, I don't know what my thing is, but I am like, I did this genetic thing once, and it was like, do you feel like you have the need to exercise all the time? I'm like, yes. And it was like, you have this thing called the warrior gene, where it's like, I have to go exercise. So they actually gave like the code for it or whatever. And so I do jujitsu, lifting weights, cycling. I love to exercise, and it's like, I push myself really, really hard. And so I don't feel guilty about like, I start my workday at 7 a.m. like in my office at 7 a.m. and then I'll push hard until like 11. I'll go work out, eat my lunch, and then get back into it, and then go till 5 or 6, spend time with the family. And then sometimes I do a little bit more work at night. And that probably happens. I mean, I'm a founder, so it's going to happen a couple times a week. But I also listen to my body, and I pay attention to my biometrics. And so I'm fortunate enough that I'm monitoring these things. And when I see things taking a dive, I'm like, I'm just not going to work out today. I'm going to shift everything. My nutrition, I'm going to go on a walk. I'm going to get more sleep. And then it's called fluid periodization. It's like, just because you have it written down doesn't mean you have to do it. And so like, life is fluid. Life is messy. It gets muddied. And so like your lifestyle plan has to adapt as you are adapting to life. And so, that's what I pay attention to.
I love that. I actually love that you're saying that, because I think it's so important that we can have a plan, but we should always listen to our bodies and be aware of what is going on and what we really need in the moment.
Absolutely.
And I think people are always like, they try it out, and then and then they fail after a week, and then they're like, oh yeah, no, I just can't do this, and I'm so bad at this. And I'm like, no. I'm like, you got to keep on doing it. And through that process of like failing and learning and failing and learning, you actually get better at like prioritization, for example, time management, right? I'm like, you're not going to learn this overnight. You need to actually test this out. And I can see this in so many areas in my life, like nutrition, sports, performance, like, being focused at my job. And it's gotten so much better, but it's taken me like years to get where I am today. It's not like I just integrated it and boom, I was perfect.
I could tell you're a good coach. No. I wish I could have a recording of that.
You
that
have.
was really good. I do. Yeah, that's right. I can pull it up.
All right. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested to learn more about AIM7 or about the work that you do?
Yeah, you can go to aim7.com, AIM7.com. And actually, I have what's called a high performance newsletter. I send it out every Friday. And
I just signed up for that earlier today.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. So you can go sign up. I'm always
super excited to read news about that too.
Well, thank you. Go sign up there. And then actually when the product is ready in 1st of July, we'll let you guys know. You'll get first crack at it, be a part of an early beta group. And then follow me on Instagram at Erik Korem, ErikKorem. And I'm putting out daily content on stress, resilience, adaptation, sleep. That'd be a great way to get a hold of me.
That's awesome. And do you do that regularly, that you do corporate workshops? Because you mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast today.
I am, yes. If people want me to, we will, but I'm doing a special partnership with a company that focuses on burnout. And I'm going to be doing stuff inside this massive ecosystem where they serve kind of almost over 100,000 employees. But what I'm doing is to create the biggest impact on building a tech product that people can access around the world.
Right. Well, this was very wonderful. I really appreciate this interview and the insights that you delivered. I'm very excited to see your product coming out. I have no doubt that it's going to be really successful and something that's really needed. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.